want to talk to you today about overcoming hopelessness and despair. I want to talk to you today about the hope of making the world a better place. And I want to talk to you today about how ordinary citizens like you and I have the power to make this happen. But most of all, I want to talk to you about shoveling snow. In Newfoundland, we shovel a lot of it. I did a little bit of math, and in St. John's, we get about 29 million tons of snow each year. That's about 275 tons each, or the equivalent of 825 Newfoundland moose. That's a lot of snow. But I told you I was going to talk about overcoming hopelessness and despair, not how to cause it. So let me tell you the upside of all that snow to shovel. The street I live on in the west end of St. John's is this great big long street, and there's a bunch of bungalows down the one side and probably 100 tiny, colorful row houses down the other. And being so crowded, you really get to know your neighbors. You might not always know their names, but you'll get to know what they're having for dinner, what they're watching on TV, what time their kids are going to bed. But something remarkable happens on this street after it snows. After the storm is over, everyone pours out of their little row houses armed with shovels and snowblowers to dig ourselves out. And within a few hours of shoveling our snow into our little piles, or big piles, bigger piles, on the little bits of sidewalk in front of our houses, the street is transformed from a clogged mess to an intricately sculpted maze of piles and pathways and parking spaces. And the whole scene, it resembles some sort of anthill that's been kicked or a really mundane street festival. The whole event is remarkably ordinary. But that's just it. The remarkable ordinariness of it is what makes it extraordinary. Extraordinary in how something so plain can illustrate so well the basic and persistent meaning of citizenship. Participation in this shovel-palooza is a form of basic citizenship. It's the pre-political, non-partisan human activity of living next to one another, of being neighbors. And there's incredible power in this. There's power in proximity to collect us. There's power in activity, even mundane activity, in being able to transform us in our neighborhoods. There's power in citizenship to make our world a better place. Czech playwright turned president Václav Havel wrote an essay in 1978 called The Power of the Powerless. And in the essay, he took stock of the status quo in Czechoslovakia at the time. And he saw a country slowly choking itself to death. But he also assessed the chances of change, and he saw a faint but persistent hope. Culpability for the regime, for the repressiveness of the regime, he said, was not in the hands of those in official positions of power, but in the hands of the people who allow the system to persist. Regular folks who go along with things, who sacrifice their feelings and values to maintain a comfortable lifestyle. He says that the status quo holds the sway that it does because people are willing to passively participate in the system. He says that the status quo depends upon ordinary citizens sacrificing their power to choose for themselves or to live in truth, as he calls it, without a peep. The power of the powerless, then, lies in the powerless's power to say thanks but no thanks to this bargain, their moral corruption for creature comfort. And the simple act of defiance, the simple act of just saying thanks, begins to undermine the system. The first blow struck is a refusal to go along with the lies of the system. Then the knockout punch is when this refusal turns to action. Now, the contrast between our circumstances here and now, with a bit of snow, and Havel's in communist Czechoslovakia in the 70s were a little bit different, granted. But in his assessment of his situation and what I see in our situation, there's a lot of similarities. The prevailing philosophy in the Western world for the last number of years, how we understand ourselves and our world, has been shifting from, we can call it a modern ethos of big unifying ideas that bring us all together, like Christianity, science, capitalism, communism, even citizenship, to this idea, we can call it postmodernism, where these big ideas dissolve into fragments and bits and pieces and float away. But this dissolution of these big unifying ideas has become a ready excuse for slipping into the abyss of moral relativity and hopelessness and despair at the immutable state of things. It makes us seem so small and the status quo seems so big. But this is a misunderstanding. This isn't the disappearance of our connection to one another. This isn't the disappearance of our power to decide for ourselves. This isn't the disappearance of citizenship. No. This is a failure of ourselves to understand our world. This is a failure of the ethos. Because what we miss when we jump to this postmodern understanding of ourselves isn't that when these big binding ideas disappear, we don't. We're still here, crammed cheek to jowl in our colorful little row houses, shoveling our 825 moose worth of snow. Take a look around. Listen to some of these speakers today. You'll see everyone in groups, large and small, working to exercise their power to do things for themselves and their communities. Things like organizing monthly speaker series, starting foundations, starting community gardens, getting together for a softball game, or joining an impromptu army to shovel snow. So I just want to leave you with this final message. Do not despair. Do not lose hope. Do not underestimate the power of small acts of ordinary citizenship to add up to something big. And whatever you do, do not stop shoveling. Thank you.